in the middle of a meeting, please stand and follow the meeting administrator to the meeting evacuation point outside the building. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair, we have apologies from Councillors Brereton, Jordan and Clark.
Thank you very much. Before I continue, there'll be a slight change in the agenda. For item 3A, within our agenda packs, officers have recommended to withdraw the item from the agenda to allow more time to discuss transport matters. Are we all agreed?
Well, could we do a vote? Proposer and seconder.
Could I have someone to propose to withdraw the item? Councillor Mockball and seconder, Councillor Sanderson. All those in favour, please raise your hand.
So, can we do it through the...
Sorry.
So, could we instigate a vote?
You asked us to do a vote.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah. So, everybody in favour? Right. So,
is that working?
It doesn't look so it is. Yeah. So, for the benefit of Councillors Dew and Tavlin, so it's non-screen voting, so left is for, red is against, and yellow is abstain. If you want to press that on the device. Okay, have you done that?
Yeah.
Sorry? Is that finished?
Oh, here we go.
Right.
Right.
Okay, and that's in favour?
So that's unanimous. So do we press the button to
Yep.
get rid of it?
So that should get rid of it. Yeah.
Okay. This might be a learning curve for us all. So I'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is item 1, which is our minutes, and we need to approve a correct record of the minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of December 2025. All those in agreement that it is a correct record?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Aye, or do you need us to press?
Aye is fine.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is members' interest. Are there any members that would like to declare an interest in relation to any items on the agenda this evening? Councillor Slade.
Items 3C and D, I'm the ward councillor.
Councillor Wakeford.
Just to flag, Chair, my Cabinet responsibilities include housing and economic development, among other things which are relevant to items on the agenda, but I approach all of them with an open mind as ever, but just to flag that for formality's sake.
Thank you. I have a declaration of interest with item 3B because I am the district member for that ward. So we will move on to item 3B on the agenda, which is an application that's going to be presented to us by our planning officer, Saffron Loseby.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so this application is for under reference 01237 outline, which seeks the outline planning permission for the demolition of the existing equestrian centre buildings and the erection of up to 7 dwellings with all matters reserved. The site is located at Northbrook Equestrian Centre on New Road off of Darcy. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, so this slide provides the initial context for the site, which lies to the south of New Road and beyond the defined built-up area of Offord Cluny. The site comprises previously developed land associated with the former equestrian use. The application site extends to approximately 0.4 hectares and contains covered menage, storage buildings, areas half standing. The equestrian use has ceased and the buildings are considered redundant. These slides sort of aim to show its wider context, really, illustrating its relationship with New Road and nearby residential development at the Glebe, which is to the west, while outside the settlement boundary, the site benefits from existing development form and some screening. Okay, this is the indicative layout, demonstrating how up to 7 dwellings could be accommodated, largely within the footprint of the existing buildings and hard standing. Matters of layout, scale, appearance, access and landscaping would be considered at the reserved matters stage. This slide here shows the area of public highway available from the application site to the Glebe, highlighting land that is available for the inclusion of the 2-metre highway requested by the LHA to ensure pedestrian use does not conflict with that of other road users. This is just giving you sort of an idea in terms of some of the history for this site. We did have this site came before us previously with an application for 28 units, which was dismissed at appeal. And then to the left, to the west of the site is a recent approval for a PIP for up to 9 units. So just some photos for you for context. This is it shows the existing access and the highway environment looking east along New Road. Visibility is achievable and the scale of development will result in fewer vehicle movements than the former equestrian site. And then looking west, this slide illustrates the relationship with the Glebe and the location where pedestrian connectivity improvements would link the site to the existing footway. The principle of development, officers consider the principle of development acceptable, having regard to the site's previously developed status. You can see some stables here. Next one, thank you. It would remove the large equestrian structures with the potential to replace them with sensitively designed residential development alongside landscape and ecological enhancements, looking at an improvement to the site and the site's appearance. Then we've just got some more buildings that are there on site at the minute. Beyond that, you can see some of the trees that are along that boundary. This is one of the larger buildings to the south of the site. And then, thank you. And then approval. The recommendation is one of approval. This slide setting out some of the conditions covering the reserve matters: highway works, drainage, construction management, ecology, trees, accessibility and sustainability. Further conditions are detailed, including biodiversity net gain, tree protection, replacement planting, external lighting, accessible and adaptable dwellings, water efficiency and fire hydrants. In conclusion, officers consider the proposal represents a sustainable form of development, delivering housing on previously developed land, reducing traffic movements, improving the site's appearance and securing biodiversity. Subject to conditions, the planning balance weighs in favour of approval on this site. You would have noticed from the update that came for the late representations, we have got some further comments from Cadent Gas, which they raised no objections, and then the Lead Local Flood Authority, who did raise an objection to the application of surface water on drainage grounds, based on the information submitted for the indicative drainage strategy, surface water flow path, hydraulic modelling, and outfall arrangements. And in response to that, the applicant's drainage consultant has submitted a technical note confirming that the proposed development would be confined to the footprint of the existing equestrian buildings, with no raising of ground levels, no displacement of existing surface water, an overall reduction in impermeable area. Officers consider that this additional evidence demonstrates the surface floodwater can be managed appropriately in principle, with detailed drainage designed to be secured through condition at reserve matters. And I think that is everything. Oh, and the other thing was the change in recommendation based on the Lead Local Flood Authority late representations and coming backwards and forwards with the agent. The officer recommendation is amended slightly to approval subject to the conditions outlined in the report and delegated authority to the Head of Planning, Infrastructure and Public Protection to resolve any outstanding LLFA objection and to agree a suitably worded condition, surface water drainage condition, to be attached to the outline permission. That's everything. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have one speaker for this particular application. That speaker is Simon Tyndale, who is the agent. Welcome. You have 3 minutes in which to address the committee, and when you're ready, you can press the right button.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. My name is Simon Tyndall from Brown & Co. I'm a Chartered Town Planner and I represent the applicants and landowners, Mr and Mrs Pavitt Golding. So the Equestrian Centre has been operating in this location for many years. However, my clients have wound down the business and have reached the point where they would like to retire. They've explored several alternative options and have settled on the opportunity to redevelop this brownfield site for up to 7 houses. We have worked with officers during the application to address all concerns, and we consider that we are at a point where we have no technical objections. The parish council objection, which is why we're here tonight, we understand they were concerned about the sustainability relationship of the application site with the main village. The clients have committed to providing a footpath between the site and the village, which we believe will make the sustainability of the site akin to that of a development in an urban area with less than 10 minutes walk to the primary school and convenience supermarket. In terms of the flood risk, as you heard from Saffron there was a late objection as late as last Thursday, which we've managed to work with officers to address relatively quickly, and as such we believe that there's no technical objection now with regard to that, and that can be dealt with by the imposition of a well-worded condition. In summary, the proposal will deliver up to 7 new dwellings on a brownfield site, which will aid housing land supply in the district. I'm happy to answer any questions, and hopefully your first application vote will go well. And just a reminder, it's the green button. Thank you very much. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Are there any councillors that have a question for our speaker? There are no. Oh, Councillor Niche.
Thank you, Chair. I've got 3 red lights now. And feedback. It's a question that might answer both, but as this is the only speaker, I'd ask it now. Is obviously you talked about the surface water, and that it's been agreed that it could be managed appropriately. I suppose the question I'm asking is, what sort of system are you having to manage it? Is it a pump system, or is it just because you talk about then going to maintain by a site management company? Is there already a site management company dealing with it, or is that something you're looking for the future?
If I can answer that, Chair. So at this stage, we're looking at outline. So was that for the office, or was that for?
I'm
at
happy
this stage,
for you to answer that. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. So at this stage, we're looking at outline, we're looking at the principle of development, and officers are confident that the surface water can be managed from the information that we've submitted. There's no increase in the footprint of the buildings, and therefore, if anything, surface water drainage across the site will be improved. In terms of the surface water flow going into the drainage system, then that is yet to be designed. We haven't obviously gone through the technical design of that, but that will be addressed during the technical, the reserve matters, and the condition that I understand that officers are suggesting will require that the technical details for the drainage system are submitted at that point, and that will be scrutinised at that point. But we're confident that in principle that can be dealt with at the stage. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions for this particular speaker? There are no other questions, so thank you very much for joining us this evening. So we will now move on to the discussion. Who would like to? Oh, yeah, sorry. Questions of clarification. Councillor Niche, did you want to ask a question of clarification of our planning officers?
I wasn't going to because I think I got the answer anyway, but it just goes on to the one. Obviously, I do tend to have a concern when we leave it to management companies when there's certain flooding things, but I do realise in this one, of course, theoretically it's going to be less than it's currently there anyway.
Councillor Tevlin?
Thanks, Chair. It's just a quick one, really, about LP14 and the amenity side. With it having previously been an equestrian centre, how long has that been sort of disused as an equestrian centre? And in terms of losing that amenity versus getting the development, yeah, I'd just like to get more of the historical context. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. The equestrian centre has sort of died down in terms of its use. The owner still has horses on site, still uses it for their own personal use, and so there are still being used for horses, but on a personal level rather than a commercial level. In terms of the length of time of that, I think it's sort of died down quite significantly from the previous application that came in. So it's been quite a long time, sort of dying down, so to speak, because it was technically similar when the last application came in, and that was 23, I think it was, so for some time now.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions of clarification for the planning officer? No other questions. So in that case, we will move on to the discussion. Who would like to just start the discussion for me? Councillor Sanderson, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I don't see any problem with this application. I think everything's been clarified. The report is very thorough. Obviously, last time there was an application that went to appeal that was declined, but that was for 28 dwellings, and we weren't in tilted balance at that point, obviously, which we are now. Pleased to see the 2 metre wide footpath will be installed. I think LP33 refers to the enhancement of a site, which I think this clearly does. I think it meets that test. The flood issues at 7.59 have been clarified, so I won't propose acceptance yet, allow colleagues to debate, but I think this is quite a good application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sanderson. We'll move to Councillor Goulson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, when I first arrived on site there, seeing the single track road, that gave me cause for concern. I will say the development as it's shown in draft here shows 7 plots with capacity for up to 21 vehicles. And so I know that is quite a few. But it did seem a single track road does seem a bit limiting on there, and a 2 metre footpath as well. I have my concerns on the access. However, Highways have said that they are clear on that and they're content with that, with the Grampian position, that the footpath and so on should be done. It should be in place beforehand. The actual development, I'm quite, as I say, quite pleased that there is the parking, because otherwise we'd have problems. There's the open space and SUDS. I'm preferring to wait to the rest of the debate because basically it's one of those that I think it is out in the open countryside, and basically it does seem to be something that could start the ball rolling for the next partial development.
Thank you very much, Councillor Goulson. We'll move next to Councillor Wakeford.
Thank you. I'll comment, because I'm coming in before Councillor Niche, who often might as well, that it's obviously disappointing we haven't heard from the Parish Council this evening, when they're the basis of this being before us. I think the application is a strong one anyway, not least in our current position as a council. This is making a better use of existing developed land. It's actually reducing the flooding risk on the land in view of reduction of coverage of paved areas. I think which otherwise the flooding objection would be a concern to us. I think with the improvements to access and the footpath that we've discussed, as the representative for the applicant put it, it does bring a level of connectivity that many of our residents in more urban settings don't have in terms of proximity to the amenities that are in the village. So I find this extremely difficult to see basis to object to. I wonder if we're far enough into the debate to put a proposal on the table to accept this subject to the adjusted language proposed in the late reps to secure the delegation around flooding.
So is that a proposal? Thank you.
It is, Chair.
Councillor Mockball?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just piggybacking off Councillor Tevlin's question about LP 14. Did we have a robust marketing exercise done to demonstrate that that this was a okay, loss of facilities?
There wasn't any marketing information submitted with this application. I think given the sort of length of time from the previous application to this one here, I think it was quite clear that the use wasn't going to change into anything else. It was the applicant's land, the applicant's horses. It's been used for their purposes and their purposes only, and it's much larger than required. You'll see from the plan at the top there on the screen that they have got more space for their own horses, their paddocks, and the land to the south is theirs as well as the land to the east and the land to the west. Let me just excuse me. I think that's everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mockball. Councillor Niche and then Councillor G.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not convinced this is as clear cut as Councillor Wakeford makes out, although some of the issues have been dealt with. We talked about flooding, which I think they've sort of been dealt with. The access is the bit that really worries me still, although it seems to be sorted. I'm surprised it's coming through an outline as opposed with Grampian conditions as opposed to already being dealt with by highways, which is an interesting one. I think my biggest concern still is, when we read the appeals history on 4.9, which the inspector said this is clearly in the open countryside, resulting in unsustainable location for a residential development. It doesn't say how many. And yes, I noticed in 7.37 that you also refer to it and just say it's because there are less dwellings. It doesn't stop from the front that it's still clearly in the open countryside and not necessarily an ideal location, in my view and the inspector's view, for previous residential development. Having said that, that's why I think it's clearer. I know we're in tilted balance, but tilted balance doesn't knock out the fact that it's clearly well into the countryside. I just think it's more finely balanced than actually let's tick it through. I'm pleased to see most of the areas that Parish had concerns have been sorted, but I still do worry about this one. And same with Councillor Goulson, when you're putting something out there and then of course we can do a load of infill instead. And Offa Cluny hasn't got a lot of infrastructure in place to deal with a lot more housing. And I know this is only 7, but I know we're only looking at this application, but I just have a little bit of concern that we're just brushing away open countryside while we're in tilted balance, so it doesn't matter.
Thank you very much, Councillor Nish. I'll just bring in our planning officers.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. So just picking up on the discussion that members are having. So I think it's just worth noting that this particular application is in relation to the front of the site, where there's existing buildings. So under LP 33, there's the reuse or replacement of buildings in the countryside. So I think members just be mindful of when you're looking at this application, every application on its own merits. But yes, it is in the countryside, but this is about the reuse of buildings or replacement of buildings. So in terms of kind of infills and everything, of course, those applications would be assessed on its own merits, but that would be greenfield lands adjacent, it's a field. This is what we'd class as brownfield lands in terms of it's already built on. So there is a slightly different policy context. And I'd say that is the policy opening for development in this location is under LP 33. It's not just because it's in the countryside. So just to be clear. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to Councillor Chu.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just following on from what the colleagues have said, it's interesting that now we are in tilted balance. You know, the presumption is in favour of, unless we come up with reasons not to. That's where things are greatly different from where we normally are, where we can take a thing and build it outwards. I accept what colleagues have said on various issues, but I think in view of what Mr. Tomlinson said, and regarding the policies, we've got to look at them overall and balance them. And as much as I would like to perhaps say it's in the open countryside, in view of the fact that it's reuse of existing buildings or the site of the buildings, that you know, slightly knocks that into a cocked hat. I think also the other issue would be if they were agricultural buildings, we'd be having the, you know, they'd have the option to put an application in to convert them as they are, which, you know, in the past we've had, and then they've had to come back to put something decent on. So as much as I've got reservations about it, I think as it sits at the moment, I can't find any reasons that carry weight that we could say no on. It's like with the highways issues. I totally agree with my colleagues on it. But when the Highways Authority, which are the people that you know, I was thinking if it goes back to the inspector, who do they ask? They ask the Highways Authority. They say there is no problem. They're the expert witness, and that puts it slightly into cocked hat. Regarding the issues of amenity, I think there's a lot out there still, and we'd have trouble arguing that there's a huge loss of it on that. So if you wish, I'm quite happy to second the proposal if that would help.
Yeah, I'll take that as a second to the proposal. Are there any other councillors that wish to contribute to the discussion? No other councillors, so we will move to a vote. We've had a proposal from Councillor Wakeford, which has been seconded by Councillor Dew, that we approve, we give delegated powers to our Chief Planning Officer for approval with a suited condition to resolve the LFFA's issues that are there now with drainage. All those in favour of approval, please raise your hand. Oh, no, sorry.
Just doing it now.
Okay, so we're voting on the new system. Oh. Okay, so that is unanimous. That's 100% for. So we will move on to the next item on the agenda. The next item on the agenda is 3C. And our planning officer, Mari Rosamond, will come and present that for us. No, we will have Lewis Tomlinson is going to be presenting that to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the application in front of you tonight is land adjacent to 31 Luke Street, Eynesbury, and the proposal is for the erection of 4 dwellings and associated works. So the application site is located in the built-up area of St Neots. The site is also located within St Neots Conservation Area. So on the image on the right-hand side, you can just make out some pink shading. The darker pink are listed buildings, and obviously you can see the site itself is in black hashed. And then on the left, you've just got the site location plan with the red line showing the site. So the plot is an irregular shaped parcel of land with a narrow frontage to Luke Street. It was previously a market garden with an existing access from Luke Street that's shared with the access to the adjacent Sandy Court residential development. The site is entirely surrounded by existing residential development. The site is generally flat and lies within flood zone 1. That's an aerial image of the site. So you can see it's that grass, that green area kind of in the centre of that image. These are site photos. So this is taken from Luke Street. So you can see the site on the right-hand side in the background. And you can see that shared access to Sandy Court on the left-hand side. This is just looking back towards Luke Street. So this is standing on the shared driveway to Sandy Court with the site on your left-hand side behind the fencing. This is within the site looking towards Luke Street. Again, within the site looking towards the back of residential dwellings. Within the site again, and within the site, another one within the site. Right, so there is extensive planning history on the site. There's been 8 applications before this one in front of you tonight. 4 of those have been dismissed at appeal. Most recently, a planning application for the proposed erection of 4 dwellings was refused by members at DMC back in August last year. There was one reason for refusal, which related to heritage harm on the wider St Neots conservation area, which was not outweighed by any public benefit. This application also seeks approval for the erection of 4 3-bedroom dwellings comprising a mixture of 1.5-storey and 2-storey buildings. I'm just going to run through the plans, but I think I'm just going to point out some of these differences as we go along between the 2 schemes. But first, I'll just show you the proposed plans. So you can see the site plan in front of you. You've got numbers showing the different plots, 1, 2 at the bottom, 3 and 4 at the top. You can see there's a central courtyard, and you can see obviously, gardens gardens backing on to existing residential gardens surround the site, and you can see the access to Luke Street, and you can see Sandy Court is the development on the right-hand side that's adjacent. So these are the elevations. So you can see there's a mixture of 2-storey, 1.5-storey, weatherboarding, pan tile. Also noting roof lights as well. Again, elevations. These are the floor plans. So you can see ground floor on the left-hand side for all the units and first floor on the right-hand side. And that is a cycle store, so that would be in the gardens of the proposed dwellings. So I'm just going to go side by side and just going to point out. So left-hand side is the refused application that came to DMC in August last year, and the right-hand side is the current application. So you can see it's quite similar in terms of layout. The main differences to note here is a slight reduction in hard standing to accommodate soft landscaping to the front of the plots. The materials were previously block paving and now gravel. There's also additional landscaping and paving provided to the front of plots 1, 2 and 4. 1 parking space is also shown to the front of plot 1. And the roof of the integrated garage to the north of plot 1 has changed from a pitch roof to a double gable roof. That reduces its overall ridge height from 4.79 to 4.32. So this is just a more zoomed in version of that. So you can see the differences there. There is some additional soft landscaping as outlined, but in terms of general layout and design, there's not too much different. And then these are just kind of highlighting some of those things I've just gone through. So there you can see the change of the garage roof type. So previously, as outlined, it's changed from a pitch roof to a double gable roof. So that's reduced the height. That garage is there just highlighted on the right hand side. And these are the changes within the actual built form itself. So in theory, the only changes are plots 1, 2 and 3, previously labelled as bedroom 4, is now annotated as a study. Plots 1 and 2 have the ground floor study now annotated as a sitting room. Plot 3 has a study that's now a sitting room. Again, you can see just there, just labelling rooms differently. So overall, in comparison to the proposed scheme for 4 dwellings on the site that was refused by members back in August last year, it's considered that the scheme is still cramped and contrived, with the retention and addition of multiple roof lights, creating a cluttered visual composition. Hard servicing still predominates the core of the scheme. No visitor parking is provided, and the potential for indiscriminate parking would result in a cluttered, urbanised environment. The event will differ significantly from the established historic pattern of linear housing surrounding the site. Whilst the size of the gardens have been increased, this is in small in contrast to generous gardens to properties on Luke Street. So overall, officers do not feel that the reasons for refusal have been addressed. This is in relation to the previous one that came to DMC, and also the inspector's decisions, which, as I say, there's been 8 applications before this and 4 appeal decisions. So the officer recommendation is refusal, as outlined in the report. But just to summarise, the site sits within the conservation area. The event would appear unduly cramped due to lack of space around the buildings, which undue dominance of hard landscaping for vehicles and a lack of space for adequate soft landscaping would result in a poor quality development, which would detract from the appearance of the site, the special character and appearance of St Neots conservation area and surrounding area. The proposal therefore does not conserve or enhance an historic environment or respond positively to its context or appear to draw inspiration from the character or its surroundings or contribute positively to the area's character and identity or successfully integrate with the adjoining buildings and spaces. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. We have 3 speakers for this particular application. We will start with the Town Council, which is St Neots Town Council, and we have Councillor Colin Mason.
Thank you, Chair.
Welcome.
Good evening, and I'm happy to be back here.
You have 3 minutes in which to address the committee, and if you press the right button, oh, you've done it, fantastic. Oh, if you press the right button, then it will light up red at the top, and then you're ready to speak. So if you press it again.
How's that? Good. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. St Neots Town Council considered this proposal in the context of a long and well-documented planning history on this site. Previous schemes have been refused or dismissed due to supposed overdevelopment and perceived harm to the St Neots conservation area. It's for that reason that our support for this application should be seen as measured and pragmatic. Earlier iterations showed this site with many more dwellings, but the applicant has in this instance reduced the scale of development to just 4 dwellings. This represents a clear step down from the earlier proposals. St Neots Town Council recognised the site's sensitivities, including its constrained access, the backland nature and conservation area settings. St Neots members noted that the site is entirely surrounded by existing residential development and sits within the built-up area of St Neots. There is also precedent for backland development nearby, which informed the Town Council's view that, in principle, a limited form of development on this site should be acceptable. We fully acknowledge and respect the objection from the District Council's Conservation Officer, and the statutory duty to preserve or enhance the conservation area is a significant consideration. The Town Council does not dispute that this proposal results in less than substantial harm. The question for members, as we saw it, is whether that harm is outweighed by other material considerations in this particular case. The reduced number of dwellings, the attempt to soften the layout through additional landscaping, and the opportunity to bring a long-standing derelict and disused site into managed use were factors that led the Town Council to support this application. In our recommendation for approval, we stress the importance of securing appropriate archaeological investigation and detailed landscaping and materials by condition, should permission be granted. Ultimately, the decision rests with this committee, but the Town Council's support reflects our view that this is the least intensive and most considered scheme brought forward to for this site to date. Thank you, Chair. If anybody would like to ask any questions, I'll do my best.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for this particular speaker? Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Colin. In our report at 7.26, it actually says, whilst welcoming some of the amendments, so bedroom numbers down from 15 to 12, on the surface that may appear to be a reduction in the scale of development, but the footprint, positioning and massing of the dwellings remain the same as that previously submitted. Is that something you're aware of or your committee was aware of? Okay, thank you. That seems to me to suggest that actually nothing has substantially changed from before, but we'll do that in the debate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other councillors that wish to ask a question of this speaker? There are no more questions, so thank you very much for speaking to us this evening.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members.
We will move on to our next speaker on this particular application, which is an objector, Derek Davies, and I believe they are online.
Hello, yes, Chair, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, and you have 3 minutes in which to address the committee, and thank you for coming this evening.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for letting me speak about this application. This really is a case of here we go again, as this is the 9th attempt to get planning permission in 10 years by the applicant. The reasons for refusal quoted by the planning officer are still valid and haven't changed at all from the previous applications, some of which went to appeal and were still rejected. For information, I actually live directly behind plot 1 in Ferrers Avenue, so I overlook the whole site. Although the access route has been widened into Luke Street, the residents are now starting to use this extra parking space. You'll see from one of the photos you took, they're actually using that space for extra parking and therefore negating the wider access. Also, the Town Council is currently consulting on making Luke Street a one-way street from east to west and banning motorhomes and caravans from using this road because of the very narrow effect that parking has on that road. Effectively, this would mean that traffic leaving the proposed development having to make a very sharp 90-degree left turn between parked cars. Heavy goods vehicles already struggle to use Luke Street, and construction will only make this issue worse. The application is renamed from the previous application, renaming bedroom 4 in 3 of the plots to studies instead of bedrooms. But it's slightly meaningless, as the planning officer highlighted in his report, that the resident can still then use it as a bedroom. So they're just trying to pull the wool over your eyes again, I think. And finally, in an attempt to negate overlooking issues, the developer has proposed to plant rows of tightly spaced trees around the boundary. This will have a substantial impact on the light into neighbouring properties, and tree roots will spread beyond the boundary. I trust the committee will refuse this application, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for any of our councillors for this particular speaker? There are no questions, so thank you very much for addressing the committee this evening. We will move on to our next speaker, which is Simon Richardson, who is the agent. I believe they are online as well.
Yes, yes.
Hello, Simon. We can see you. Just want to see whether we can hear you. Oh, I think we can hear you now.
How's that?
Yes, brilliant.
Brilliant.
Thank you. You have 3 minutes in which to address the committee, and when you're ready, you may start.
Lovely. Thank you, Chairman, and good evening again, members. I will try and rattle through some very quick bullet points because, as you will remember, this application, an application for this site was before you, I think Lewis said, in August of last year. At that time, even though we'd shown that minimising the central area to the absolute minimum and increasing new soft landscaping and planting, we hadn't had vehicle tracking plots to demonstrate that. We took on board the advice from members, we went away, and we now have those, and they are included. So as you'll see from the previous application to this one, the central area has reduced by getting on for 50%, probably 40 odd % in size. So that's a significant change. Just picking up on something Councillor Sanderson mentioned, where he was saying that the footprint and massing were the same. Well, again, Lewis outlined that there has been a change to the one property where members requested that, which was that end property, and by use of architectural detailing and design, scale, mass, bulk have all been reduced there. So again, another further significant change. The neighbours comment and welcome that neighbours are taking an interest. Again, as you will see, proposed as part of the proposals are increases to the width of the access, and also a slight realignment as it joins the public highway that the local highways authority are saying will actually improve pedestrian and highway free flow both into and out of the site, and also Luke Street as a whole. So this is actually a betterment. And one of the previous inspectors had also said that those access improvements were also an improvement to the character and appearance of the conservation area. So there's there's a significant benefit to the conservation area. In terms of the various applications and appeals that are cited within the report as put forward as evidence as to why this is unacceptable and can't be approved, as you've heard, the original application for the site all those years ago, I think, was for 11 units. I think the actual first pre-application, I think we've had 5 or 6 pre-application submissions as well, and you get a different view from different officers over the years. I think the first pre-application submission was for 13 units. On advice, that was reduced down to 11. So if we have an inspector's decision from 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago saying there are too many units, it's too cramped, that may well have been the case on a scheme of 11 or a subsequent scheme of 9 and then 8 and then 7. But what you have before you now really is cutting things down to the bare bones. In terms of the site, as Lewis outlined, it is a former market garden site, so you've got all the various clutter and tuck that goes with that. And to either side, this is effectively the third remaining remnant of the site. The Sandy Court houses to the east are on another chunk of parcel of the land, and Pawley Court has also been redeveloped. Both of those in a very similar way to as now proposed in terms of grain and design, and they're not a Coronation Street linear simple arrangement as part of Luke Street is, but even Luke Street, only the western half is simple and linear. The eastern side is individual. If that's my time, sorry, I'll stop there and happily answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for this particular speaker? Councillor Wakeford.
Thank you for addressing us this evening, Simon. I just wonder, as you made reference, and as I understood, leant quite heavily on the suggestion that this committee had only requested certain things on the previous application. I just wonder if you'd recognise that DMC in making a decision is considering an application before it, and isn't the same thing as our sort of pre-app advice service around what setting out in any formal way what changes would be necessary to an application to make it acceptable. I just wonder if you'd like to clarify comments about what we'd asked for in what you've just said.
Yeah, certainly. So my takeaway from that meeting that I was at as well was that those were the sticking points in terms of that architectural detailing on one of the properties, and being able to demonstrate that a reduction by almost half of that central area and the introduction of more soft planting was what was required. For the previous application, I'm sure we'll all remember that at the time, the council's urban design team had those lodged as concerns, and even though we'd shown that they could be addressed, those drawings weren't presented to members, and part of the discussion amongst members was, well, can you show that, which is what informed this scheme. The current scheme before you, again, I'm sure you will see from the report, the council's urban design officers are now happy with matters. So again, that reflects the nature of the debate and the discussion from the previous committee. So I'm happy that I understood what was discussed, and I was understood the nature of the debate. So what we've got now is highways, trees, landscaping, urban design, flood risk. Absolutely everybody is all happy with it. We have one branch of the local authority that isn't, which is a significant change from last time, because the issues which were discussed, and it was a very useful debate last time, but those issues have been fed back into the scheme and used to inform the revised proposals which you've now got before you, which I hope answers your question.
If I may, Chair, I think I was inviting you to comment perhaps more briefly on whether you would clarify that you weren't suggesting to us that comments made last time were determinative of what we need to decide now. But I think I've probably made that point, so you needn't comment further unless you wish.
I never miss an opportunity to comment. Just to say that what we took away from the consideration of the proposals last time has been fed back in and used into these. So yes, I think that was useful.
Thank you very much. Are there any other councillors that wish to ask a question of this speaker? There are no other questions, so thank you very much. That will move us on to questions of clarification for our planning officers. Are there any questions of clarification for our planning officers? I will bring in our planning officer.
If I could, and through you, Chair, just to pick up a couple of points raised by the agent. So if we're just going back through planning history, the first application was back in 2016 and was for 9 dwellings. So pre-app discussions may have taken place before, but that went to appeal and was dismissed. So as previously outlined, there's been 8 applications before this one. 4 of them were dismissed at appeal. Just picking up on the highways point, so looking at the highways comments in full, highways say, while the vehicle visibility displays are slightly less than those required, mindful to a set that which is achievable, giving us an improvement over the already substandard access and use. So highways haven't put it forward as a substantial benefit. They're just merely stating it's an improvement over what's currently there. But in terms of visibility displays, does not quite meet the standard. So I think it's just worth bearing that in mind, members. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions for our planning officer? Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Chair. I just wondered if Lewis could just clarify comments in the report, paragraph 7.26, which the agent did respond to, implying that actually the footprint is smaller than the previous application. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. So we've got the site plans on the screen in front of you. Let me just go back to the more zoomed in version. So in terms, so there has been a reduction in bedroom numbers. That being said, it's purely down to labelling. So they haven't reduced the size of those rooms to make them not fit the space standards, for example. So we can't class them as a bedroom. So while they're still labelled as a study, we still could consider them as a bedroom. But the overall footprint, positioning, scale of the buildings remain the same. As you can see from the site plans side by side, it's a bit of spot the difference in terms of what's different here. The main changes as outlined are the hard servicing. Yes, there has been a reduction. And I think one of the key points of looking at the previous applications, yes, the quantum of development has come down, but in terms of the footprint and the scale, it remains pretty much the same. So the officer recommendation is in line with previous appeal decisions on this. So yeah, while there has been some improvements, the overall scale of the development remains quite similar to the previously refused.
Thank you. Councillor Wakeford, did you have a question of clarification?
I think officers have largely covered there. I was just proposing to invite officers to confirm what weight we could or couldn't place on the label given to a room in a plan in terms of its enforceability or proper assessment. But I think Lewis has spoken to that sufficiently.
Thank you. Are there any other questions of clarification for the planning officers? No. So we will move on to the discussion. Do I have a councillor that is willing to start the discussion for me? Councillor Corney, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. I actually look at this and I don't have too much of an issue with it, if I'm honest. I don't, sort of, so just listening to Lewis now, I mean, and I accept this, you look at the drawings, there's not a massive amount of change between what happened and what came before us before, but there is a difference. I remember at the time I didn't really have a massive amount of concern at the last meeting, but that was then, and we're now looking at a different application. We've just heard about the renaming of a room. Well, I mean, how many of us use a bedroom as a study? I mean, it can go both ways. I think that's a little bit of a almost a bit of a red herring, almost. But if that's the best way of sort of describing it. But I don't know how many times it goes around, and I just think there's an attempt there to polish it from before. I can't say much more than that. I don't really have an issue. I'm not going to go as far as proposing it at the moment because I think it's too early in the debate to sort of to go down that route. But so I'll be interested to see what my colleagues have and what their feeling is over it as well. And I think it's worth saying as well. I think that actually we sometimes give St Neots Town Council a bit of a bad press, and I think actually I felt they've done a good job tonight. If I'm honest, I think actually, and I agree with what they've said. So I think that's probably where I'm sat at the moment. But I'll leave it there, Chair. Thank you, and see where the debate goes.
Thank you very much. Councillor Tevlin.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I'm not proposing or seconding at this point, but I think for me, it's the harm for it as a heritage asset and the development would not be outweighed by this harm caused. I think for me on the NPPF, that is just the resounding factor as to why I would refuse this application. But again, I'm still open to debate at this point.
Councillor Slade.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm quite familiar with this one, and I struggle with it. It's there's a long history to this, going back a decade, so it's difficult to kind of look at this one in isolation. And there's a certain level of stubbornness from this this developer to kind of develop this site, and it's difficult to look at how the scaling has changed over time. But I think the officers have got this right. I'm happy to propose that we reject this. I think it's the time we do that.
Thank you. I'll take that as a proposal of refusal. Is there Councillor Pitt? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So just picking up on the hard standing, I think the move to gravel doesn't feel significant to me. I guess on one level, I welcome that there is, the front gardens, I think, is an improvement in and of itself. However, I do share the concerns outlined in the report about, if you've got cars parked in front of garages rather than inside them, which is pretty common, there's going to be quite a lot of difficulty actually getting cars in and out of the site. So I think while it kind of perhaps not solves one problem about the quantum of hard standing,
by reducing it, actually, it's created another problem. So I kind of feel like we're sort of moving those problems around. I mean, other than that, the fact that it's dismissed at the previous application and, you know, what is a significant difference this time, I'm struggling to find differences here that warrant a different outcome.
Thank you very much. Councillor Niche.
Thank you, Chair. Again, the changes are minuscule. Yes, you can see it if you look closely, and it has probably slightly improved it. And I'm a bit with my fellow councillor here that previously I thought it was close. I think this is still close. So I'm still fairly balanced on this one. I worry about the access and egress to it. I still think it's trying to shoe too much into a small, awkward area. And that on the moment is still edging me more towards agreement of refusal, along with the fact that, you know, the balance of heritage aspects on that. Yeah, I think it's a difficult one still. And it's always awkward when you look at something thinking, which we'll be really mindful we don't do, is it looks a mess at the moment when you're looking at it in some areas, but we shouldn't use that as a reason to pass something. But I think this is still not quite there in my own view, considering it's so little difference to what we refused on last time.
Thank you very much. Councillor Wakeford.
Thank you. I agree with many colleagues who've spoken already. I think the question for us tonight isn't to play a game of spot the difference with last time, when I don't believe I was here in August. I think I was on a beach somewhere, so I wasn't party to this committee's decision previously, but the decision before us is to decide the application in front of us. But that said, I think comments made last time are potentially instructive. I think the cramped development, as referenced in the I think well drafted reasons for refusal proposed by officers, clearly still applies, and the space surrounding the dwellings, particularly the two northerly ones. Yes, as Councillor Pitt flagged, there is some additional green space in front of the houses in the central area, but I don't think that significantly improves or avoids the impression of a cramped place. I would commend Town Council for a contribution, which, as Councillor Corney suggested, was clearly, you know, thoughtful and balanced, and you know, a valid contribution to our debate this evening. But it doesn't make enough of a difference to me. I particularly echo the sentiment of Councillor Niche's contribution on that. The St Neots Conservation Area does have a special character and appearance, and I don't think this does justice to it. For houses, when we need homes as a district, not least in our tilted balance, you know, that is material and significant as an argument in favour of approval, but for me, even in tilted balance, Chair, it doesn't make enough of a difference to conflict with the strong conservation arguments and sort of cramped poor quality development arguments in front of us. So I would be happy to second the proposal we've got on the table, if that's helpful, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wakeford. We'll move on to Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, it is cramped, and in my mind, the whole idea why it's cramped is because these are roughly the same dimensions as in previous applications. What I don't understand really, I mean, they've got various carports which are massive. Whether they intend, or the thought is that people will turn that into part of the dwelling, I don't know. But these are quite large dwellings. Some of the room sizes are quite big today. So I just feel that
this is not the right design. I don't like the design at all. In fact, I preferred the previous open space in the centre to this one. I think with more thought and better design, they could be probably a touch smaller and make use of those carport areas and incorporate them into the dwelling, because as we know today, very few people use them anyway. So I will be going along with the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Butler. Is there anyone else that wishes to contribute to the discussion before we move on to a vote? No, so we will move on to the vote digitally. If you vote when it comes up. The proposal is for refusal by Councillor Slade and seconded by Councillor Wakeford, and that's for refusal. So green to agree with refusal. So we have 12 for, 1 against and no abstentions. Therefore, this application has been refused. We would just have a quick comfort break. Item 3D on the agenda, which is an application in St Neots, which will be brought to us by our planning officer, Olivia Manton.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. This application is agenda item 3D of your pack. The application before you this evening relates to the proposed erection of a 3-bedroom bungalow with garage and associated works on land to the rear of 34 to 38 Ackerman Street, Eton Soken, which was previously the beer garden for 38 Ackerman Street. It is within the conservation area. This application is presented to members because the officer recommendation of refusal differs to that of the Parish Council of approval, as it is considered that the proposal would not preserve the setting to the listed building at number 36 Ackerman Street or the character and appearance of the conservation area, and therefore does not accord with LP 11, 12 and 34 of the local plan. In effect, the principle of a dwelling within this location is not supported. It follows a previous planning application 25000756 full for a single bungalow and garage that was refused at committee in August 2025. Here before you can see the site plan with pink hatched areas showing the conservation area with the listed building in pink to the rear. And here is an aerial view of the site, and I think here you can clearly see that the land has already been cleared. You can see the hard standing area, which is where the proposed application site is. And here we have a proposed site layout. It shows the new access point to the site and 2 parking spaces for number 38 Ackerman Street, located right there. The next slide. Here are the proposed elevations, floor plans and garage. And here is a slide showing the previous application and the current to show the differences. And the main points is that the orientation of the proposed dwelling has been changed. So I don't know if you want to go to the next slide. The front porch has been removed. Location of some doors and windows have changed due to the layout change. The footprint is slightly larger, which is now 15.63 metres by 15.29. Previously it was 14.84 by 15.54, so slightly larger. And there's a slight reduction in height by 20 centimetres, so the ridge height is now it was 4.41 and it's now 4.2 metres. However, the heritage concerns do still remain. And here are some photos of the site. So at the beginning we've got 2023, 22, 23, and then present where you can see that the land has been prepared already. And again, at the top, you've got where when the pub was in existence with the outbuildings, and here where the land at the bottom is where the land's all been cleared in the access site. And here is the application site, which shows that it has been already been cleared, ready for development, and has already been subdivided. So now we go to the reason for refusal. So it is noted that the application for a single dwelling was refused at committee last August, which included 2 refusal reasons. Due to the change in the site layout, the residential amenity refusal reason has now been removed, but the heritage refusal reason remains as per the previous refusal. The main point being that the principle of a dwelling in this location is not supported. The conservation team has been consulted on the proposal and their comments have been fed into the officer report before you. So the recommendation is refusal, as stated in paragraph 8 of the officer report. The site, and here is the reason, the site is an area of undeveloped open land to the rear of and associated with the Grade 2 listed building 36 Ackerman Street and sits within the St Neots Conservation Area. As an area of open land, the application site contributes to the setting of the listed building at number 36 as an element which allows space around the building for it to be seen and also seen within the group of historic buildings. The application site also provides a buffer which creates a physical separation between the historic group of buildings containing the listed building and the modern housing estate to the south and east. By virtue of the scale, design and siting of the proposed dwelling, the proposed development is considered harmful to the significance of the adjacent listed building and harmful to the significance of the conservation area. The proposal is not considered to preserve the conservation area's character or appearance, as it does not maintain the historic grouping of buildings along Ackerman Street, nor the grain, scale or character of the historic agricultural settlement. So given the nature of the proposed development, any public benefits are considered to be negligible and would not outweigh the identified harm in this instance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have two speakers on this particular application. We have Councillor Colin Maslin from St Neots Town Council. Welcome back.
Thank you, Chair.
And when you're ready,
See you all again.
and when you're ready, you have 3 minutes. And if you just press the right button, your speaker should be lit up.
Okay, is that working? Good, thank you. Again, thank you, Chair, and thank you, members of the committee. St Neots Town Council considered this proposal in detail, mindful of the site's location within the conservation area and its proximity to the Grade 2 listed building at 36 Ackerman Street. We were also aware of the planning history, including the refusal of an earlier scheme for this site. This application seeks permission for just one single-storey building to the rear of 34 to 38. It's wholly within an established residential area of Eaton Soken. The site is not isolated, has historically been associated with the former pub, and sits within a sustainable location in terms of access to services. St Neots Town Council acknowledges the objection raised by the District Council's Conservation Officer, and we recognise a statutory duty to preserve or enhance the character. We do not dispute that the proposal would result in less than substantial harm to these heritage assets. Members considered whether the scale and form of development proposed would materially worsen that harm, but concluded that it didn't. The single-storey nature of the bungalow, its reduced height, and the limited scale of development were factors that members felt were relevant in assessing impact, particularly when compared with potentially more intensive forms of development. We also noted that no objections were raised by technical consultees in respect of highways, access, or environmental health, and that matters such as materials, landscaping, archaeology, and biodiversity could, if permission were granted, be addressed through appropriate conditions. Ultimately, St Neots Town Council councillors recognise that this is a finely balanced case where heritage considerations could carry significant weight. Our comments are intended to assist the committee by setting out how members assess the proposal rather than to diminish the importance of the conservation objection. The decision rests with you, ladies and gentlemen, in the committee. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions of clarification for this particular speaker? There are no questions of clarification. Thank you very much for coming this evening and joining us. We will move on to our next speaker. Our next speaker is the agent, Simon Richardson, who is online.
And hopefully he can be heard.
Yes, we can hear you. We
Brilliant.
have 3 minutes in which to address the committee, and when you're ready, you may start.
Lovely. Thank you very much, and good evening again, everybody. If you can all see the comparison between the previous scheme and the current one, which I can on the screen that I'm looking at, I think that's a good starting point. I don't want to nitpick and be negative from the start, but as a simple matter of fact, the bungalow as now proposed has a reduced footprint, not larger footprint than the previous one. Having worked out the community infrastructure levy areas on this, it's actually come down from 172.2 square metres in the previous one to 162.6. So within a Nats What's It of 10 square metres less. So it's not larger, the footprint is reduced. In terms of the ridge height of the bungalow, and again, this was something which was taken away from the consideration and debate of the previous application, the maximum height of the property has also been reduced from 4.41 to 4.2. Not a massive reduction, but a reduction, and one which makes the building work, because otherwise if you get artificially lower pitches it looks terrible. So we've got a building with a smaller footprint, We've got a building with a reduced scale, mass and bulk. We've got a building with a much more sensitive location in terms of its position within the site and orientation. And as you'll see from the removal of any concerns about neighbour amenity impacts, you know, I would like to think that that's an example of good design having worked. We have one objection relating to the impact on the heritage assets. Some of the slides, which I don't think were actually presented or discussed, show that until very, very recently, within the last sort of 18 months or so, the site was not visible at all. It was visually impermeable by a collection of breeze block and precast concrete outbuildings and conifers and then some trees. It's only with those going in the last 18 months or so that there were any views into the site. And the report mentions that the OS map from 1900 doesn't show any buildings on the site. Well, I can tell you, you know, when it was a pub and was a pub for however many years, when the pub use ceased, within that land at the back, there were hard standings for patios, there were smoking shelters, there were outside bars, there was a ball court, you know, there was an awful lot going on in there. So in terms of the site having been cleared, what was cleared was an awful lot of structures and outbuildings and you know, unnecessary hard surfacing. So that's all gone. In terms of the submitted site plan, I'm not sure if you've picked up, but annotated on there in red dashed lines show the actual view between the nearest property in Simpkin Close and the rear of the former pub building at 38, which shows only a very tiny glimpsed view of the rear of the listed building. And I say, and even that very tiny glimpsed view has only existed in the last 18 months or so with the clearance of the outbuildings, which were modern precast concrete, breeze block, granted permission by HDC within the last sort of 20, 30, 40 years or so. So, you know, the land is not integral to the character and setting of the listed building. You'll note the listed
Drawing
building.
close to your 3 minutes.
Okay, I will wrap up very quickly then. The listed building description only comments on elements on the front of the building. And, you know, we all know that doesn't mean that only the front is listed. But what it does suggest is that when the building was listed, they couldn't see the back. And the reason they couldn't see the back was no views historically have existed. I'm sure I'm close. So once again, please, any questions and we'll see what we can do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions of clarification for this particular speaker? There are no questions of.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Wakefield.
While we have the speaker, I wondered if you'd permit us to ask officers to offer a view on the scale. I have to say, from the side-by-side plans we had up a moment ago, the new one did look a little less, but I don't know if that's because the scale was a little bit different. But on the figures we were presented earlier, it sounded like it was an increase. But is that helpful in case there is anything further the speaker might wish to say to explain any misunderstanding?
Yeah, I'll bring in our planning officer for clarification on that.
From the site plan, it was clear to me that the scale was slightly, I mean, scale on the view on the slide are slightly different, but from the measurements, it said to me that the footprint was slightly larger. It was minimal, but there was a slight difference in footprint.
Not at all.
Okay. A question from Councillor Pitt.
Well, if I may be so bold just to chip in on this topic, I wonder whether, because I think the measurements quoted were the kind of the gross in 2 dimensions. So essentially, if the gross external boundaries of the building are slightly bigger, but each part of the L shape is narrower, which is what it looks to me, then the internal floor space may well be smaller, even though the gross dimensions are larger.
Okay. Are there any other questions for this particular speaker?
If I may,
Councillor Wakefield.
it may be material for us. Does the speaker, Simon, do you agree with Ben's, Councillor Pitt's speculation there that we may be talking slightly at cross purposes? Were the sort of height and width dimensions, or sorry, length and width dimensions on our slides correct, but a bit more is chopped out of the middle of the L shape? Or are you suggesting that the 15 point something by 15 point something figures, as opposed to the 15 point something by 14 point something figures we were showing before, do you not recognise those as accurate?
I've not got the thank you for the question. I've not got the exact dimensions to hand. What I would say though, as a simple matter of fact, the footprint of the second scheme is smaller than the footprint of the first. Now, as you say, whether that's longer and narrower as opposed to shorter and fatter, you know, however it gets there, but it's lost, you know, 9.6, I think it is, square meters overall. So there's been a, you know, a meaningful, not massive, but a meaningful reduction in footprint, combined with a reduction, again, only of just over 200 mil. You know, but a reduction in overall height as well. So in terms of bulk, scale and mass, you're reducing all of those.
Thank you very much. So we're clear that your position is the surface area of the dwelling is a bit less, and you mentioned, was it 10 square meters? Conscious you may not have the detailed dimensions in front of you, just wonder if you're in a position to comment on whether you concede it may be true that the length and width are dimensions are larger than the old one, or are you suggesting to us that that's mistaken, the information that's been put to us, the 15 by 15 meters as opposed to the 15 by 14 point something?
Yeah, sorry, I don't have a CAD package at the moment, and it sounds as though we are coming down to measuring millimeters. They are broadly similar, but overall there's a 10 square meter reduction in footprint.
Thank you. Are there any other questions of clarification from this particular speaker? Councillor? No? Okay. So we have no more questions of clarification from our speaker. So thank you for joining us this evening. We will move on to the next part of our meeting, which are questions of clarification for our planning officer. So Councillor Niche.
Thank you, Chair. My eyesight's not particularly brilliant even with these glasses. I'm just trying to work out the distance, which I think is measured on there, between the kitchen study lounge and the actual border, if that makes sense. Because it looks like to me as if it's right on the border, but there could be 2 meters, 3 meters, I don't know.
For you, Chair, so the measurement between the kitchen and study is 1.3 to the boundary, but as you move kind of further north where you've got the lounge, so kitchen and lounge, increases to 2 meters. And just while I have the mic, and sorry Councillor Niche if you had a follow-up question, but I think it's just worth coming back on some of the points mentioned by the agent. So number 38 Ackerman Street, so these are from the report, so paragraphs, you've got 7.22, and this picks up on number 38 was a historic pub, so that recently gained permission for conversion into a dwelling house. So just looking at the photos in front, you can see, if we look at the bottom left one, you can see that new fencing that's created a garden for the new dwelling. I think just members need to be mindful that under the permission to convert the pub into a dwelling, all of the garden for the pub was meant to be the garden for the dwelling house. So current separation is not lawful. It has not been granted permission. So they basically have gone ahead and separated out the site. So I think it's just be mindful of what we're looking at here. It's not a development site ready to go. It was in fact land associated with a previous pub that has now been converted to a dwelling. They've just separated it out into 2 plots. Just again, picking up on the listed building, it's not just about where you can view the listed building from, we're talking about the setting of the listed building here. These properties are historic properties, they're all listed in their own right. The land associated that we're looking at as part of this application site is land associated with the historic building that used to be a pub. So when we're talking about the setting of a listed building, it's not just about where you can view it from, but it's how you experience those listed buildings. So it's just worth picking up some of these points where I think the photos, when you look at it, it looks like a separate parcel of land. It should be associated with that historic pub that's been recently converted to a dwelling. So I hope that's just clear for all members. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dew, do you have a question?
Funnily enough, that what Lewis just came in with there was part of what I was going to ask, because obviously when you're dealing with listed buildings, it's not just whether you can see in, it's the views out as well that are important, as you say, as part of the setting. So I think you've really answered the question I was going to ask, that you know, that is as important as the view in. The fact, you know, and also it was really useful to say with the fence there, because if you look at that top right photo, which I presume is where we're looking at, it looks like the views wouldn't be greatly affected, but if that fence shouldn't be there anyway, it would make a heck of a difference. So I don't know if you've got anything you want to add to that, Lewis, at all, or just leave me where I am.
Through you, Chair. So I think kind of the points covered, but you just remind me to add something. So yes, there was some associated development in the pub garden, but that was stuff that you'd expect to see in a pub garden. None of it was of a scale that is relative to the proposed dwelling you're seeing in front of you. Single-storey structures, a smoking area, some seating, etc. Nothing that you would class as development as such. It wouldn't need planning permission in its own right. So I think, yeah, just picking up on those points, the photos obviously represent what's there at the moment. We need to be mindful of what should be there, and that land should be associated with the number 38 Ackerman Street. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Pitt.
Thank you. I don't want to lead you to say something that you might not want to, but just to be clear in my mind, so the fence would require planning permission and doesn't currently have that permission. Is that an accurate summary?
So correct. So listed buildings do not have permitted development rights. Obviously, what we granted planning permission for under the conversion, I'm looking at the site plan right in front of me, and there was a section 73 application went alongside it. It included all of the land you're seeing as part of the application site to be associated with that new dwelling. So what they've done is gone ahead and separate it out. And I think that's quite misleading when we look at the site, because historically that land is associated with a listed building. Whether or not then that says you can't separate it out or not, I'm just saying the photos are quite misleading in terms of how that land should be seen in the context of a listed building.
I think if I just come and point, Chair, through yourself, just to pick up on Councillor Pitt's question to Lewis. Yes, the fence has gone up. That in itself would require permission, but I think what tied together is this subdividing or dividing of the unit, the planning unit as a whole. Doesn't mean it won't necessarily get consent, but it's not there, yes, and that's not something that we've considered previously.
Are there any other questions of clarification for our planning officer? Councillor Wakeford.
Thank you. Just on a similar point, so we are clear what we are and aren't being steered upon, or what we are and aren't being invited to make a judgment on. This committee is not making planning enforcement decisions. Enforcement is separate to planning, and we all know that. I'm sort of saying that out loud and seeing nods to remind ourselves. But was there any intention, or would you like to clarify, there wasn't any intention to suggest that somehow a decision on the application in front of us tonight will create a difficulty for the separate application for use of the pub, or not? Is there anything we should have in our minds about whether there's any material consideration of the knock-on impact on the change of use for the historic pub itself, as opposed to what's in our pack about the site in front of us? So I think that context was helpful, but just clarification on that might be helpful too.
Yeah, if I could. So just to be correct, the number 38 isn't listed. So that was my mistake. There are listed buildings adjacent to it. So what we're talking about is that kind of historic context. But the pub is historic. I think in terms of enforcement, again, yes, every application on its own merits. We won't talk about enforcement here. I think we're purely looking at the photos itself. You've already seen that subdivision take place. But that is not what was approved under the change of use application. So that land was previously associated with historic pub use. The listed buildings, again, just to be clear, are adjacent to number 38 Akerman Street.
Thank you very much. Councillor Pitt.
So I did have a question. It's sort of been partially covered and partially perhaps usurped by the conversation we've just had, but I'm just keen to understand in terms of sort of visual amenity of a listed building, what are the things we should be focused on? So we're acknowledging that the site is generally not visible from the street. So what is the main crux of the concern in terms of the visual impact on and or from the listed building?
Yes, through you, Chair. I think I'll come back on that point, if I may. In terms of the actual setting of a listed building, it's not whether or not a additional or ancillary buildings can be seen or can't be seen from the public setting or the clear view from a vantage point. It's the setting as the whole. So when that was originally a public house and or possibly at some point historically a coach house that would have a large setting with it, at that point, that's when the listing was actually clarified. So it would have been the building and surrounding it. So you've got to look at the setting of a listed building. I mean, there are some listed buildings that have small yards at the back and nothing else. There are others that have acres of land surrounding it and within the grounds. In this particular case, it's the building and what was originally shown, what is currently shown as this plot at the moment, that was seen in its totality as the building and its setting. So it was all of it that was looked at when that building was the listed, the listing of that particular building. So it's not a case of trying to separate the two. It's just what's in front of the members this evening is the use of that particular area. That's what's been picked up by Councillor Wakeford, that what may or may not be forthcoming from this is a separate something we'll have to look at another day.
You have a follow-up.
Please. So it's not a specific view from one place to another. It's more about the sort of concept of that site being, yeah.
That's correct.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions of clarification for our planning officers? There's no other questions of clarification. So then we will move on to the discussion. Who is willing to start that for me? Councillor Pitt, thank you very much.
So I was fairly on the fence about this one as I went into it. I think the debate has been quite informative. So yeah, my mind at the moment is towards refusal. I think that whole issue about, you know, the site being part of the listed building and so forth, I think, yeah, that makes it much more difficult to see how how any kind of development is in line with that. So, I mean, it's a very brief point, but that's kind of where my head's at the moment, and keen to discuss other views on that topic.
Thank you very much, Councillor Pitt. Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Chair. I think this has been an interesting debate, as Councillor Pitt said, but I find it difficult to find a way of arguing against the officer recommendation here. At paragraph 8, it says, by virtue of the scale, design and siting of the proposed dwelling, the proposed development is considered harmful to the significance of the adjacent listed building, and it's also harmful to the conservation area by the fact that it's between the sort of very modern development towards the back and the more traditional development, the grade 2 listed buildings. I'm struggling to see ways in which, if members were minded to refuse this, on what grounds, approve this, on what grounds they could do so, because I think the recommendation is pretty clear. Thank you.
Do we have any other councillors? Councillor Dew.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I tend to agree with my colleagues. I'm a bit confused about the welcoming the debate. We've only just started it. I thought we were just having questions of clarification before, but I think it's just a bad choice of words rather than anything else. So where we are now is the fact that we've got a site here that's got a listed building alongside it. You know, the conservation officer said it's less than substantial harm, but that doesn't actually diminish it. You've got to still look into what's there, and you know, you can only override it if you've got real reasons for doing so. And to be blunt, there aren't any, you know, that we could hang our hat on. I initially thought, when looking at the fact that the bungalow's been spun around, so it's actually the most bulk of it's further away, in my head thought that may make it a bit better. But the truth is, if we're looking at the site as a whole and its effects on the listed building, you know, if we've got a conservation officer saying in their opinion that, you know, there's less than substantial harm and no mitigating factors, I can't find any mitigating factors to support that in any way. So I'm quite happy to propose refusal if you'll take that from me, Chair.
Thank you. Yes, I'll take that as a proposal for refusal. Councillor Wakeford.
Thank you, Councillor Dew. Well summarised my thoughts, perhaps even more briefly than I might have managed myself, so I won't repeat him other than to say I'll second the proposal on the table.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wakeford. Is there anyone that wishes to contribute to the discussion further than... No, there are no other councillors wishing to speak, so we will go to the vote. We have had a proposal of refusal from Councillor Dew and a seconded by Councillor Wakeford for refusal. So if you are going to refuse, you will press the green button and press the red if you're against that. So if you could vote. We're just waiting for the results to go through. Do we need to do that again? Okay, so if we can re-vote, please. So green is for refusal and red is against. So that's 13 votes for, and that's unanimous. So therefore that has been refused. We move on to the next item on the agenda. The next items are appeal decisions, and our planning service manager will bring that report to us this evening.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just two decisions to make members aware of. I'll take the last one first. Application for a single-storey extension. This was allowed. Was recommended for refusal, but unfortunately the inspector didn't agree with the officer's decision. And then the first one on that list is for the Haddon solar farm. Members may recall this application came in front of members for a likely decision. The inspector has now considered that. They've dismissed the appeal. However, in the actual reasoning for that, or the summary for that reasoning for the appeal to be dismissed, concurred that the information, there's insufficient information relating to the glint and glare on aviation, or certainly safe operation of aircraft. That said, that effectively suggests that were the applicant to address that, we may well get another application, but as it stands, the inspector has dismissed that appeal. Is there any questions on that, councillors?
Councillor Wakeford.
Thank you. I haven't read the appeal judgment, so may do. But were there any other grounds for grounds set out there, or was it purely around the lack of evidence around glint and glare?
It was insufficient clarity on that point. Yes.
Thank you very much. So that brings us to the end of our meeting. So I'd like to thank those who have contributed to the discussion this evening and for the hard work that the planning officers have put into writing the report and presenting to us this evening. And I bring the meeting to a close.